Well, good morning, folks. Should be a good show today. I have a candidate that I believe in. He's also running against somebody that I really dislike, so I truly hope he wins. I am joined by Assembly candidate for the California Assembly District 31.
Correct.
Solomon Verduzco.
Yep.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on, Eric.
I appreciate that, a young guy. We were just talking before we started about high school, and I realized that it's been a long time.
Yeah, I'm sorry to feel that too.
Well, yeah, but for you, it's only 4 years. For me, it's like more years than you are old.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, why'd you jump in to do this?
Well, it's simply just caring about my community. Growing up in Southwest Fresno, my parents were blue-collar workers. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and then same thing with my grandparents. And I see that today, people are struggling more than ever. It used to be that you could have a mom at home, stay home, take care of the kids. And I want to say that's one of the biggest contributors to my success is my mom stood home. I remember in the 6th grade, one of my grades were slipping, so my mom stood an entire week into my class. And after that week, I had the highest grade in the class, made up all my work, and I think that's a main contributor to success in our society is having a mother at home that could take care of the kids, make sure they're on the right track. And today, that's nearly impossible. Both parents have to be working to afford living here in California.
Largely, though, I think that a lot of people are so concerned about having certain things.
Mm-hmm.
If you were willing to sacrifice for your kids, and kids are worth it, more people than we think could actually pull that off.
Yeah, definitely. We've definitely became a society of material rather than, relationships with other people. And I think that's one of the biggest downfalls that we've seen within the past 20, 30 years. I'm not old enough to remember, but, in the 80s and 90s, there was a strong sense of community within neighborhoods. I mean, today it's rare to find a neighborhood who has a very strong neighborhood watch, community engagement where they're all constantly going around with each other, the kids playing with each other. I mean, I look back at the end of my childhood and we completely stopped doing that versus the beginning where we knew our neighbors, we were talking with them, and now it seems like everyone's became a lot more individual driven.
I think a lot of people, they're afraid. And because we've set up a system where there's no accountability in California, it's pretty hard to just go, well, I can just go let my kids play. Instead, people are keeping them at home.
Yeah.
They're worried about it. We need to fix that.
Yeah, definitely. I just think about my neighborhood, Southwest Fresno, near Edison High School. Our car has been broken into or broken just by people walking by, kicking our things. And it's absolutely scary. I mean, what father and mother would let their children go hang out when, you go to the local park and there's a group of homeless people there doing drugs? I mean, it's scary. I think of the park that I played at when I was a child. I mean, today it looks abandoned. Nobody goes to there to play basketball, football like we used to when we were kids, or even a barbecue. And it's absolutely sad because, I mean, this is our home. This is our community, and we should, be able to feel comfortable in our own community.
Well, California set up a system where since there's no accountability, petty crime is ignored.
Yeah.
As soon as people realize petty crime is ignored, they feel emboldened to do more. It's like you're rewarding bad behavior, and magically, Democrats, you found a way to get more bad behavior.
Yeah, I think you look at New York and how it was in the, I want to say, early 90s before Rudy Giuliani came. And it was absolutely insane how much crime there was. And as soon as he got elected, what he did was he implemented the broken windows policy where he was going to crack down on smaller crimes because he knew criminals who could go on to commit smaller crimes usually go on to commit bigger crimes. And I think that's a really smart policy for Californians to adopt. I mean, it's proven in history that it actually works, but it starts with at the state legislature allowing cities to go ahead and make that focus and saying, okay, we're going to crack down on these smaller crimes. That's what pushed me to run. If you haven't seen already, and they're trying to shoot down the Prop 47 initiative, which is absolutely insane, by creating a bunch of amendments that would basically allow it to do nothing. And it's absolutely insane what this one-party rule has brought us.
I truly believe that one-party rule is corrupt.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to constantly defend them and say, hey, no, they're actually trying for the people, because time after time, whether that be the gas tax that hit us yesterday or whether that be what they're doing to Prop 47 or homelessness. I mean, it's kind of very hard to defend them, but people are waking up. I think that's going to be the best for the Republican Party, because we've seen it with SB 14. If we go out and expose them, we are going to be the winning party.
So SB 14, tell them, because not everybody knows what that is. Tell them what it is.
Yeah, so SB 14 basically made it a serious felony to become a human trafficker, but Democrats in the committee and in the state assembly had constantly tried to shoot it down. But Senator Shannon Grove went out to go to the media, talk to people in her community, and said, look, this is what the Democrats are doing right in your face. They're saying that human traffickers are more important than the victims, which is absolutely insane. And there was major outrage from both Republicans and Democrats. And then what happened, it got passed through the committee, passed in the assembly, the Senate, all the way to the governor's desk, and got signed into law. And that's what the strategy that Republicans have to have, so we can start gaining ground and bringing about the great state.
We're truly a minority.
Yeah.
They can pass anything they want without getting a single Republican vote.
Yeah, it's a super majority.
Yeah, super majority. So you have to think outside of the box.
Yeah, and I think Senator Shannon Grove laid out the game plan for us to be like, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. I think the Republicans should really focus on those really easy battles, whether that be, solving homelessness, solving crime, lowering the cost of living, where it's a bipartisan of, no matter if you're voting Republican or Democrat, you feel it at the gas station. You don't go into the gas station, put in a Democrat card, and you automatically get $2 less on gas. Everybody's paying the most expensive gas in California. So what it is double down on these issues, show how the Democrats in Sacramento do not care about us, and how they're not trying to help lower the cost of living, improve our education system, or solve our public safety issues.
When you look at the gas tax, and I think this one hits everybody, and the poorer you are, the more it hits you.
Yeah, definitely.
Because gas would be essentially it's a regressive tax, because just a larger percentage of your income is spent when you're poor than when you're rich on gas. At 11 cents added, folks, it was already, 58, I think, before?
Yeah.
Plus federal.
Yeah.
Plus local sales tax.
Yeah.
California has the highest gas tax. And for those of you that are listening in other states, what you have to realize is that the liberal politicians in those other states are rubbing their hands going, oh, I see how it's done. How things happen in California affects the rest of the nation. We need to fix this problem here, and this is why you need to be elected.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you look at things like that, or just like common sense things, just like housing. I mean, why do we not just keep building more houses and make it easier for builders to build? You look at, the permits fees and project fees, it's upwards of $160,000 per home in some areas in California, which is absolutely insane. Then you have, we have to lower construction costs because of the environmental, I think it was Regulations Act. We need to reform that, because that's not allowing us to build. They want higher quality, making it more expensive to build, and builders and developers are going to be like, no, this isn't worth it. We're not getting the bang for the buck that we're putting all into this. And we're selling homes at the most expensive in the entire nation, and it's absolutely insane, because the dream of home ownership is no longer there.
Well, it's what allows people to be middle class and then work from there.
Yeah.
For most of my adult life, I did not own a home. I, thank goodness, finally buckled down, took care of business, and got in before the interest rates went crazy. But my payment would be over double. I only bought my house basically 5 years ago. I would be paying twice as much, because my interest rate would be essentially double.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And I just look back on my uncle. He bought his house in 2011. It was a brand new home, 3-bed, 2 baths, decent backyard. He only bought it for $150,000, which is absolutely insane. And then today it's $400,000. The amount of it skyrocketing is insane, because how about future homeowners? How are they going to buy homes? How am I going to buy a home? That's my uncle. How are his kids going to buy a home? It seems like it will never happen, and we're going to be forever renters, because the housing market keeps going up and up, because Sacramento politicians, the Democrats, aren't allowing builders to build. They want specific environmental regulations. Developers are constantly getting sued, delaying projects, making it more expensive, and that's why we're in the situation we're in right now.
Also, local governments, about 40% of their budgets, these are approximate numbers, come from property tax. Now, the state gets a portion of it, but about 40% of their budget and 40% comes from sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so they're motivated to have property built, but now you've got the state saying, but you have to do it this way.
Yeah.
And now the state has said, you need to build many in affordable housing, and it needs to be little tiny houses, but they're not helping with the infrastructure. So, for instance, if I have a big enough lot that I could put another house on the back part of my lot, a small, like a
Yeah.
little house, and it'd be legal, but that doesn't deal with the additional plumbing that the city has to pay for. So California keeps mandating things and expecting local governments to pay for them and tying their hands.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest questions I get asked is like, Solomon, what are you going to do to change all these things? And I think it's quite the opposite. I mean, if I get elected, I want to do less things at the state level, because if you look at our economy, it thrives most when there's less regulations, when there's less taxation on commodities. And that's just kind of like how it's been forever, but until like the last 5 minutes with California politicians being like, no, let's overregulate everything. Let's make sure it's done this way, which drives up the cost. I mean, you look at the $20 increase of minimum wage at fast food chains. My brother, for example, was working at McDonald's. He just graduated, was working there for 2 months, getting a decent amount of hours. And then right after that happened, he hasn't been called into work for 2 months. He had to go get a different job. And there was a study that recently came out probably about a week ago where 10,000 people lost their jobs because of this. And it shows that over-regulating things really hurts the people of the lower and middle class more than anything. And that's what we need to stop doing up in Sacramento.
Well, every form of government always has rich people, so they'll be okay.
Yeah.
But creating an environment where people can flourish matters.
Yes.
California's failing in education.
Yep.
Anything you can do if you were elected, how would you approach education? Because we're falling on our face.
Yeah,
basically.
definitely. The Fresno County has some of the most failing schools in the entire in the state of California. And going out to these neighbors and talking with voters, that's a big concern on their list when it comes to issues, when it comes to elect politicians. And I told them, look, it's really simple. You know, you look at areas like the Fresno High District, Hoover, McLean, and Roosevelt. These are poor income neighborhoods. We got to allow school choice. People who are constricted to their zip code doesn't give them the educational opportunities they could have, where that could, you know, whether that be going to a better school like Edison High School or, you know, the other top performing schools in the district. And it also fosters a competitiveness within our public schools. Secondly, we need curriculum reform. You look at what we're teaching the kids today. I mean, it's nowhere near the Common Core subjects when I was in, or my early days in my academic life. Towards the end, it just completely fell off. We need to focus on these core academic subjects and STEM subjects. And then also, I think we need a merit pay system for our teachers. You know, we need to help attract and obtain the high quality educators that our students need.
All those would make a difference, because Fresno Unified is, up till about 3 years ago, was bottom 3 in the nation for large school districts. They solved the problem. Here's what they did. They decided that they needed to not participate in that survey anymore. So that fixed the problem.
Yeah,
that is typical of how
of what politics is in California. It's absolutely insane. And I think the main contributor to, you know, homelessness or crime is poor education. So we need to really focus on this and try to move the needle in the right way, because I look back at some of my classmates when I graduated in 2020 and I look to see what they're doing today, and it's like they fell victim to whether it be gang violence, or they're now in gangs, or, you know, they're dealing drugs or whatever it may be. And I'm like, wow, like these were just my classmates, you know, 5 years ago, where we're all in high school, you know, saying, oh, this is what I want to be. And it absolutely became a dumpster fire after. We need a strong foundation for our students, so they're going to go out and be prosperous in our community and actually contribute to society.
Well, in California, we've got a system set up where it's what they call social promotion. You get another year older, you're going to go to the next grade. It doesn't matter if you got Fs all year. So we're rewarding, this is another case of we're rewarding bad behavior, good intentioned policy, and I do believe that Democrats mostly have good intentions, but they never seem to admit that there's unintended consequences to having a system where you're not held accountable.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it just mostly comes down to, again, is who we're electing. I mean, you look at the past primary. In my district, only 10% of eligible voters voted. And
Yikes.
it's 10% determining what the 100% are going to have to go through. And that's where we need to start speaking up. And that's why we need more politicians who are going to be like the Senator Shannon Groves going on. I seen her a few months ago. Thursday, she was in Fresno. Friday, she was in LA. She went back to Sacramento Saturday. And then Sunday, she was back in Fresno again. And it's like we need active politicians who are going to actively go out into the community and say, look, this is what's happening. This is what's happening to your guys' life in Sacramento. We need to wake up. We need to speak out. Because just like SB 14, if enough people speak out, their change will happen for the better good of our community.
Speaking of education, and I did a show on this, AB 1955.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane for you guys that don't know. In essence, the bill said that the students or the teachers are now required by law to hide transgenderism from the parents. So if the kid comes and, tells the teachers, hey, I don't feel like I'm a boy, I'm a girl, the teachers do not, or it's against law to go out and tell the parents, which is absolutely insane because, I mean...
Well, that's assuming that this is typical of their perspective. That the parents are not, they don't have the best interest of the kids in mind.
Yeah, and
they seem to think that they own the kids.
Yeah, they think they're going to be co-parents with the real parents, and that's just absolutely not true. And it's absolutely saying it's an attack, and both Democrats and Republican voters are coming together on this issue because they know how wrong it is. And I think, again, these battleground issues where it's like common sense to be like, okay, yeah, this is wrong, is what we should capitalize as Republicans, because if voters start seeing time and time again that Democrats are doing these absolutely insane, outlandish bills, they're going to be like, well, let me vote for a Republican for the first time. And that's our job as Republicans to capitalize on it instead of, just kind of sitting on our hands and allowing the Democrats to continue to be the supermajority.
Well, it hasn't gone the last step. We'll see whether Gavin Newsom actually signs it. But it passed the Senate and the Assembly.
Yeah.
And it passed with unanimous or nearly unanimous Democratic support.
Yeah.
And absolute unanimous unanimous number of Republicans. Every single one of them voted against it.
And it shows you that it's just not enough to, stay in our Republican districts and keep those red. It shows that we have to go out into these blue areas like my district, like other districts throughout California who are on the verge of becoming Republican, but need that extra push, with whether that be, people just going door to door and spreading knowledge about the issues, because the more people know, the more people are going to be informed voters that we need this November.
Right. Well, I think Trump actually showed us by going to the inner city, first presidential candidate to go to the inner city in forever. We have inner city places in your district, where you need to be out there and reaching out. And I know you were walking right in the heart of the city. That's an old part of the city, Fresno High District of Fresno. What are people saying when you go out and talk?
Yeah, so I guess like a first point I would like to make is Ronald Reagan said it in one of his C-SPAN speeches, I believe in 1987, and it was basically that
it's not a volume. Go ahead.
The conservative philosophy is it's not knowledge from one generation or 12, but it's all knowledge of human history and applying that to today to see how we can move forward as a society. And I think it's our job as Republicans to not so much sell that philosophy, but to show the majority of Americans who already share the same philosophy that their modern political home is right here in the Republican Party. So when I go out and I talk to these people, they usually ask whether, okay, are you Republican or Democrat? And I say, well, these are the issues that I want to focus on and are important to me. And that's lowering the cost of living, improving our education system, and restoring public safety. And they all agree on these issues. And then when we talk about solutions of what the Democrats are currently doing, they're starting to realize, like, yeah, like I do feel like I've been taken advantage of the past few years. I look at life. A lot of these people are older. They say they look at the life 10, 15 years ago, and they say it is completely different. So what they're realizing is, yeah, I'm not going to vote Democrat all down the ballot. Instead, I'm going to invest into each candidate, see what they're fighting for, And if it's a candidate that's been there for so long, we're going to get them out and get new faces and new ideas.
We're going to go ahead and go to break. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. I want to say thank you to everybody that's listening on social media. We are still technically running on social media. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Truth Social, Twitter, Facebook, a little bit on Telegram, and we're playing with getting on Instagram, though I'm struggling there. So thank you. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, and hit the bell notifications if you're in the appropriate place. Let's go ahead and come back. Well, I guess we're having some technical difficulties. That's all right. There we go. I can barely hear it, but this is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. Today I am joined by Solomon Verduzco of California Assembly District 31.
How's it going with all the listeners?
I wanted to jump into homelessness. What do we do? This is a problem throughout California. Gavin Newsom promised he was going to fix it when he was mayor of San Francisco. Nothing happened. He recently has spent $24 billion, and there's no way to account for the money, and yet the problem got dramatically worse. So we actually have to have somebody that has some common sense. What would you do if you were in charge?
Yeah, so the Supreme Court has been ruling on a bunch of major cases. One of them was overruling Martin v. Boise, which basically said that you cannot forcibly remove anybody without providing adequate housing. So that was major because now cities and towns are able to make homelessness illegal, which will help pit people into homes. Because there was a recent study done a few years back in LA where they interviewed 200 people and they said, hey, we have housing for you guys that are homeless. Said, would you guys like to come with us? Almost half of them said no. So that's a large majority saying, no, we want to stay out on the streets. We don't want to go to homes, even though it's completely free. We don't have to do anything. So what cities have to do is start, okay, well, let's make it illegal. Let's provide housing to get them quickly off the streets. And it doesn't have to be super expensive. It could be $1,200 small little homes. On the state level, what we have to do is start holding these organizations accountable that we're giving money to, because a large portion of that money is going towards people's salaries on the administrative side. And, if you said, Solomon, here's a math problem right in front of you. Every year it takes for you to solve this, we're going to give you $400,000. I would milk it as long as I can, and that's what we're seeing today. And we got to start allocating more resources to the actual homelessness people, because after all the salaries are paid, after all the administrative costs are paid, very little actually gets to the homeless people. It's basically dripping on that whole flood that happened earlier with the salaries and the money given to them. So that's what we have to do, is we have to hold people accountable. We can't allow this administrative state to continue to solve homeless problem. We got to bring it back to elected officials and actually creating laws that are going to help the homeless people, rather than saying, hey, you're at liberty to stay out on the streets, do whatever drugs you want. You see what happened in San Francisco, where they're paying $5 million of tax dollars to give drinks out to people who suffer from alcoholism. And it's absolutely insane. It's like, no, we're not supposed to just string them along. We're supposed to actually get them help, because that's what the institution of the government is supposed to do.
Well, yeah, I think most of the solutions that have happened, it's just enabled them. I don't know that a housing first model always works, though. And that's what California largely bases it off of. They want to get them in housing first. And I think that if you don't address their drug, alcohol, and mental health issues, which the majority of them have, and I've dealt with homeless experts that tell me the majority, I'm not saying everybody, the majority of them.
Yeah, a large majority do fall.
They've got one of those three or all of those three. And if you don't address those, all they're going to do is move into housing and destroy it.
Yeah, and that's where there has to be some type of supervision on these properties. There has to be some type of counselors for them to actually become reintegrated into society. And that's the biggest thing. So it would be housing first. Right after, though, it would be counseling and getting them the proper help and kind of, I guess, organizing them. Like, okay, what problems do you have, whether that be mental health? Is your brain not fried enough from any of the drugs that were taken out on the streets for you to never be able to work again and become, reintegrated in society? I think all those factors play into part when you think of solutions. And I think the major part is getting them somewhere where they can no longer continue to do drugs. So there does have to be some type of overwatch when they're in these homes, in these communities, that they're not bringing drugs in, because that might only expand the problem in the sense of somebody next to them might be clean, but because they brought drugs in, they're going to fall victim to that. And
Well,
then it kinda
who
spreads
we
like
hang
that.
out with tends to define a lot who we are. And if you hang out or you're around people that do drugs and you've already got a drug problem, you're going to fall back into it.
Yeah, and you
Same
know,
with crime.
Exactly. And I think on homelessness, the scariest facts are, these people out on these streets, if it's a woman, for example, they're almost 100% chance likely of being raped out there. And homelessness only hurts the homeless people the most out of everybody in our community. So making sure they're able to get off the streets and not put in those situations where they're, I live southwest Fresno, about 2-3 miles away from the Pavalero house, and some of the things that homeless people are going through, and whether that be fighting each other or arguing with each other, going out into the streets and almost getting hit by cars, trucks, whatever it may be. I mean, they're unsafe to themselves, but also to other people in the community. So that's when we have to come together and kind of be like, okay, we need some type of overwatch and some type of housing for them to make sure they could be on that path to reintegration into society.
Since you live near Pavarello House, by the way, that is Pavarello House and Fresno Rescue Mission are the two main nonprofit solutions in Fresno County for homelessness. And they're overwhelmed. But they have people that don't want to follow rules, so they'd rather stay on the street. In other words, continue to do drugs or alcohol or not take their meds if they have mental health issues. And in our insane state, our legislature, followed by signing by Gavin Newsom, said, oh, it's okay for you to live in certain areas. Okay, so he's going to try to blame this on his hands were tied, except he made it okay. If it's state property, you could have a homeless encampment. And that was Gavin's choice.
Yeah, and I think that's what made Martin v. Boise, the overturning of that recently, I believe it was on Friday, so important, because it allows cities and towns to make it illegal rather than letting it being up to the state. Because I know California had that in the assembly, they shot it down, but Florida actually passed it as a state. And so you're going to see a contrast of, okay, is making homelessness illegal going to actually help these people? And I think so. I think Florida, they're going to be able to clean up a lot of those encampments that they have there and be able to provide them like, okay, if you don't want to go to these, housing first programs, you're going to go to jail. And then it's either that, and they're going to have to choose, okay, am I going to go to a mental health facility to get rid of my drug addiction? What am I going to do? And they're going to have to make a serious choice, but it puts them into that bind where they're not able to be like, for the past, however many years I've been out on the streets, that, oh yeah, I like it out here, I'm going to stay here. Well, no, we're not allowing that no longer here in our city. And I think it'll be a right step for Fresno to make, Clovis to make, and other cities in California, and really show it's common sense solutions for homelessness and a wide range of problems that we see here in the state of California.
I agree, but the problem is that common sense seems to be something that's rare up in Sacramento.
Yeah, so that's why I think giving the power back to the cities and towns and or the counties is a lot more important, because I mean, you look at the supermajority up in Sacramento, they're constantly voting against the best interest of the community members, and that's where this is the right first step, is realizing, okay, they're doing wrong up there. Let's get new people elected. Let's give more power back to the cities and towns where they're able to make better decisions for their community members.
A fair part of your district is agriculture.
Yeah.
California, one of our biggest problems is water. And I get that the state can't solve it on its own. It's got to be a combo of the federal government and the state government to fix it. Any ideas? What do we do?
Yeah, so there's a lot of power given to environmentalists, where they're able to sue any type of water irrigation systems where they're like, okay, this is not good. And it delays projects, it makes it more expensive, and it puts the farmers into a bind of like, man, what are we going to do? Can we just conform with this and still kind of pray and hope that we could live off of whatever they're giving us? And it's erasing the bureaucrats that are currently administrating the water and giving it back to elected officials, because again, that's what gives us the most power, is elected officials rather than people who are appointed. And I was talking to the Valley Farm Bureau, Ryan Jacobson. He said us as humans, not just farmers, we're using only 1 out of 5 droplets of water for our own use, and that's including residential and farming. The 4 other droplets are going directly back to the environment, and all we need is half a droplet to meet all of our water needs. whether that be in the cities or for farms. Another thing we could do is just simply raising the dams. It won't hurt any other type of environmentalist, whether they say it's going to, kill the fish in that area or birds. It's actually going to help them out a lot more. There was a dam that was removed somewhere in California. I can't remember where, but they removed it and it killed a lot more wildlife than people thought.
Deep Northern California.
Yeah. I believe that's what it was.
Real near the Oregon border.
Yeah, and then it just shows that these environmentalists are unhinged, they're unchecked, and they could bring lawsuits that don't have any value to it, except that that's their own opinion, that they think that they're speculating. So it's really bringing that back. And there was another major Supreme Court, I forget the beginning, but I know it's v. Chevron, and it basically allows courts to decide it rather than these bureaucrats who are able to do it. So it should help out our farmers and other industries to pull back regulations. And I think just creating more water reservoirs, creating more dams is really going to help our farmers, and just allowing them to use the water they need to prosper in the Central Valley.
It is crazy to me that there's been projects that are paid for on the books for 20 years, like Sykes Reservoir, and nothing's happened.
Yeah, and a major contributor to that is, again, a lot of the lawsuits, a lot of the delays, and we need common sense solutions where it's like, okay, well, is this going to actually work? Well, you talk to the farmers, you talk to, average people who have to deal with it on their day-to-day basis and have been in the industry for 20, 30 years. They're going to give you the real answer. You go to Stanford and listen to their researchers. They have no idea what they're talking about.
Well, and they don't seem to see a value. It's like, well, farmers are wasting water.
Yeah.
And you're forgetting that farmers are making food. We do the majority of the fruits and vegetables and most of the nuts for the entire nation plus part of the world.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal. So is food wasting water?
Yeah, it's definitely not, especially if, we're going to start importing food from other nations because we can't supply it here because we put our farmers in the bind. And when you're paying, $7, $8 for a simple apple, I mean, you're going to be like, wow, how did this happen? And this whole time it's been happening right under our nose for about the past 15, 20 years.
Mm-hmm. So I hope that common sense prevails. Another thing to look at if you get elected is do you realize that in the Delta, there's a whole bunch of cities that have partially treated sewage water. And that's part of why they have to send so much water out to the ocean, because the environmental standards, it can only be a certain level of polluted. So they have to waste a lot of that water. If they had decent treatment facilities and didn't dump gray water, for lack of a better, partially treated sewage into the Delta, we would have more water available without ever building another dam.
Yeah, I mean, it's
so finding that.
Yeah, I mean, it's finding stuff
matter.
like that, and it's like I was talking to another candidate, and he was actually bringing up that point of like how like just fixing stuff in the Delta and then allowing the pumps to pump will really help farmers here in agriculture, and it won't hurt the environment, as the environmentalists would say. And I think it's just, again, electing those common sense officials that could bring solutions where it's like, this is the easy choice on how to fix this problem rather than overcomplifying it. I think that's really going to help us out in the future and really save California.
Shifting gears a little bit, we talked about crime. We talked about homelessness. Is there anything we can do to get costs down? Because inflation is insane. Or either get inflation down or work the other side of it where we could stimulate the economy. Where's California making mistakes?
Yeah, I think it's just overspending in a lot of unnecessary ways. I mean, you look at the state of the state that Gavin Newsom had, I think, last week, where it was pre-recorded. I mean, he had nothing to say about actually addressing these real issues. And it seemed more of like a taxpayer-funded campaign ad of him running for presidency. And I think it's a lot of out-of-order issues where they're not prioritizing the right things. Well, we just need to reduce costs, because inflation isn't how good the people are living, it's how good the government's living. And if we just cut down costs, unnecessary costs, I mean, there's a lot of programs and organizations that are getting funded that there doesn't need to be. You look back at early America, where did the community lean on when they really needed help? It was other community members. And allowing us to save our money, we're going to reinvest back into our community. We've seen that historically, is if you cut back taxes and regulations, people have more money in their pockets. They're going to go out and be like, okay, well, where can I help fix things? But right now, everyone's stretching their dollar because it only goes so far where they're not able to help out the community. And that's why we see a little bit more individualism the past 10, 15 years.
that's just a scary thought that that our governor seems to have no idea on how to stimulate an economy. He thinks
Yeah.
spending more money, bringing in more citizens that some of them, in this case, I mean illegals, some of them just want to work and are hardworking people. But if they didn't come the right way,
Yeah.
that bothers me. And he gave them all free health care.
Yeah, he gave them all free healthcare, and then my opponent actually pushed a bill that would give them housing with AB 1840, and it's absolutely insane. And it's like, how are we going to say?
Yeah, well, give them down payment money to buy a house.
Exactly. And it's like,
Free money and you didn't come here legally.
Yeah, and I don't know how your homeowner experience was, but my father, I mean, he had to work, 20 years of his life in order for him to actually afford the down payment on his home. And it's absolutely insane that we're just giving it away while citizens of California who have been here their whole entire life are being neglected. And it's just stuff like this where it's like, it's just as common sense as it comes, where it's like, we need to cut spending. We need to reduce what we're doing as a state because we're obviously failing. We're at the top of every list you don't want to be a top at. We're at the bottom of every list you want to be the top at. So it doesn't really make any sense that we keep giving the government the chance to be like, okay, yeah, try and fix this problem now, because it's proven over time that they're not helping us at all, and we're better off saving our money, not giving it to the government, and finding solutions ourselves.
Do you think we should be allowing illegals in and essentially giving them, that's a form of welfare, giving them all free health care? Come on in, you can have free health care, and now we're going to try to set up a bill where you can buy a house. I bet they have to have ID to buy that house.
Yeah, but then when it comes to November, it doesn't seem like anybody has to use it.
Yeah, isn't that insane?
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And to answer your question, I mean, we can't support it. We can't even support our current citizens. How are we going to start taking care of other people when we can't even take care of our own? And that's the absolute insane part, where I'm like, wow, like, people are falling to homelessness because the cost of living is so outrageous, but then we're going to spend $5 million more to give housing down payments to illegal immigrants. That doesn't make any sense to me. And I think we need to have we need to prioritize the right things, because currently we're not. And it's, anybody who could read and has a little common sense would say this. And then it shows that either our elected officials at best are incompetent, or at worst just lying to us and taking advantage of their power and control.
I truly believe that Sacramento is more about power and control, and some of the loudest voices seem to only care about a tiny portion of the population, meaning the LGBTQ. I don't get why. I'm not saying that they don't have the right to exist. There's freedom in this country. I'm just saying the whole thing's bizarre to me, that would be one of your biggest priorities. California's kind of got three drivers: the LGBTQ people, and that's their most important issue. You've got the environmentalists, and then you've got the teachers' unions. And those are the three that control what happens in California largely. We have to break that down.
Yeah, I think the way we could break that down is quite simply doing exactly what they're doing. Is they're being activists. I mean, you got to give them credit where credit's due. They're going out, speaking with people. They're going out to Sacramento, protesting. They're doing, all these activist things that, I mean, if we do the same thing, they're going to have no other choice but to listen to us. I was talking to a few farmers, and I said, look, I'm elected. I'd love for every single farmer in California to bring their tractor to Sacramento and disrupt it as much as possible, because we've seen what happened in France. They did the exact same thing. We have to make sure we are activists and we're still involved in the community and make a ruckus when we know something's not right going on, rather than having the old conservative view of, well, as long as you're leaving me alone, I'm just going to go home, watch the TV, watch a football game, and open up a nice beer. Just leave me out of it, because that's what got us to where we're at right now. And we need to wake up as Republicans and activists as like, okay, well, let's go out there. Let's make a huge protest against AB 1955. And it's stuff like this where we could start moving the needle back into our favor.
I do believe that could work. We're going to go ahead and take our last break. Is it playing? This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on KXEX 1550 AM, the best talk in town. So for our final break, we're going to come back. We're going to talk about hope and solutions. How do we fix this? Obviously, we got to vote differently. Let's go ahead and come back. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. I am joined by Assembly candidate Solomon Verduzco, District 31, which would be largely Fresno County.
Yeah, Southwest Fresno County, including like cities like Sanger, Parlier, Selma.
Okay. What do we do to fix this? What would if you had a magic wand and your vote counted more than anybody else's? What would be your top three things to try to fix, and how would you go about it?
Yeah, I guess the first priority thing that I've noticed a lot of people care about, and probably was more on my second or third list of priorities, was improving our education system. A couple months ago, I would have been like, yeah, that's an important issue, but first let's focus on homelessness and improving public safety. But then you look into it and be like, okay, well, why are these people going out and committing crimes, or why are they becoming homeless? It's a lack of education, and they have nothing else to result to when it comes to like, what should I do in life? And I think giving them a good foundation of like, look, let's give you the common core subjects, common core things to be prosperous in California, in America, and you're gonna go out and work hard and contribute back to society. That would be one of the top ones, and then after that would be solving the current homelessness and crime crisis, because we have to do something rather than just being like, okay, let's keep writing a blank check and giving them as much money as possible. No, we have to have real life solutions that are going to actually work. And I think just looking at other states and cities that have already done success in this subject, we just have to adopt it. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. And then just lowering the cost of living. I think we're taxing on way too many commodities, which making it unbearable to live in California. The dream of home ownership is disappearing fastly in people's hands. And I think about how it's going to look when I'm able to afford a home. How much am I going to have to spend? And, I want 4 kids. And I want my wife to stay at home. I don't want her to work. So it's like, how am I going to afford all these things? And that's what's driving me to fight. And then on the broader spectrum, if I didn't have a wand, I think what we have to do as Republicans is start going out into communities who tend to lean more bluer when it comes to voting. But the principles are as conservative as it comes. I think back on a smaller scale with my family, they were all Democrats. Up until I turned 18 and got really into politics. And I told them, look, this is the truth. This is what's happening in America and California and in Fresno. This November, they're going to vote red down the ballot. In the primaries, they voted red down the ballot. And people are not dumb. They're going to realize when they're being taken advantage of. And I think this is the turning point in our society where we're like, okay, the Democrats aren't who they used to be. I didn't leave the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party left me. And my modern political home is going to be with the Republicans. And I think majority of Americans agree with the principles of the Republican Party. And we're going to see that in this upcoming election and many elections to come. And it's just continuing as Republicans to be activists. Like I said earlier, is going to Sacramento, making our voices heard. Because right now, the small majority, like you said, that whether, a part of those 3 communities, they're the loudest right now. So the lawmakers are thinking like, okay, this is what the whole entire community wants. But then when we start talking and we start making our voices heard, we're going to see serious change. But it takes every single Californian to do that.
Well, we've got 40 million people roughly in California. Mm-hmm. It's a little hard because how many illegals have we invited in during the open borders that we've had during Joe Biden? He claims that they're under control. It's totally a lie.
Yeah.
So how many people do we have? Maybe as many as 50 million.
Mm-hmm.
Hope not, but maybe that
many.
A large protest in Sacramento is 40,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
A large protest.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally they'll hit 100,000 people. People are not willing to go protest.
Yeah, and I think, didn't think of that. But yeah, I think, we're getting put into a bind in California where it's like everything's becoming unbearable. I was just at the Cornerstone fireworks show, Celebration America car show yesterday, and I was talking to the people there, and they are highly, they really don't like what the Democrats are doing, and they didn't really know who was behind it. They just knew the government was behind it. And when you start pointing the finger of like, well, who is in control right now in Sacramento? Who has the supermajority for the past, however many years it's been? And then you kind of lead them on that logical breadcrumb of, okay, well, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Yeah, this doesn't make sense. Why did they pass this? Okay, Newsom's been in control. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. And they're starting to realize, like, okay, well, let's change our vote. I mean, it won't hurt. It's the past 10 years we've been voting the same people and nothing has changed. So let's go ahead and try this new approach of, voting new people. And I think an important part of it is a lot of Californians and majority of the nation fall to the victim of identity politics. They want somebody who looks like them, not so much who shares the same principles as them. And that's why you see a lot of politicians who are currently elected. You're like, how did this person get elected? They're absolutely insane. I mean, they have like double-digit IQ. It's absolutely crazy how they got into office, and it's simply because they look the part. And that's the problem that I've ran into. But because I'm running and a few other candidates are running, they're seeing a younger generation of new faces, of a more diverse group of Republicans, where they're like, okay, this person looks like they've struggled the same way as I've struggled. Let me go ahead and, vote for them the first time. And that's what I'm hoping to see in November, is them realize like, okay, we don't need somebody who looks like us in office. We need somebody who has the same principles and has our best interests in office instead.
But you have to pay real attention to notice whether they have the same principles. Also, the Republican Party has truly failed, largely, not exclusively, but largely failed in going out and reaching people that are not traditionally Republican.
Yeah.
Define that however you want. Anybody that's not traditionally Republican, they don't bother to go out and speak to them.
Yeah.
Well, that's finally changing.
Mm-hmm. It is, and I think it's going to be great for the Republican Party coming up. What I've noticed on a personal level here in Fresno, it being nearly 60% Democrat, is I go up and I don't just what party I'm for, because that usually there's a false notion that the Republican Party is a bunch of old white guys that care about the rich of the rich, and that's just not the case. So I go up and I say, well,
not since Trump.
Yeah,
there was an argument before Trump, but not since Trump.
Yeah, and I said, well, look, I'm a conservative. I really care about my family, God, and freedom, and that's what got me out here talking with you guys and really pounding the pavement with the grassroots community and being like, okay, I've grown up here my entire life. We care about the same exact problems, and the current people we have elected have done nothing for us. Why don't we band together and get together and no longer really fall under the subject of, a lot of people hate the two-party system, and say like, okay, well, let's come together as Americans and work for a greater good. It doesn't matter if you're an independent or a Democrat. And that's the success that I've had here in Fresno. When I was walking yesterday, I was mostly talking to only Democrats and independents, and they had the same exact issues at hand of, okay, well, let's lower the cost of living, the homelessness, and our education, and the crime. I said, okay, well, look, these are my solutions. This is what they've currently have been doing for the past 10 years. They're like, wow, this is absolutely insane. And a lot of these people, they're willing to change their vote. I gained a bunch of votes yesterday just simply by talking with them, going face to face. And I think the Republican Party, look, I'm just one guy doing this. If the Republican Party mobilizes and strategically does it, I mean, we're able to probably flip California, because people on a principle level and what issues they care about look like they're leaning towards the conservative Republican Party. It's just we haven't had the initiative of going out to these communities, these super blue communities that haven't voted red in maybe even historically, and it's just going out to these communities where it's really going to help us out and really give us back control of California and the nation.
Where do you find hope?
I find hope quite honestly in Christ. I mean, I pray every day. Every morning I just get up and say, help me, give me the power to go out in my community and really help. I have a verse, Acts 20:24, where it essentially says is, my life is worthless unless I'm doing the work of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And I think that's important, is having that hope and faith that God is going to, whatever the divine plan is, that's going to be the right plan for the American people. And just praying and going out into the community and saying like, look, I build myself on faith. I want to make sure I'm a voice for you. As a Christian, we try to live our lives like Jesus Christ. And what was he? He was a servant the entire time. And that's what we have to do, is we really have to hear these people, listen to them, because they want their voices heard. They just haven't had that, and they've just been voting generationally Democratic, but that's going to change real soon.
You got about 30 seconds. Final thoughts.
Yeah, I've had major success in these blue districts, and what we need to do is continue to mobilize people, go across the aisle, and really talk to our neighbors, family, friends, and we could see a real change in California real soon.
Well, let's hope that happens. I look forward to it. I wish you the best. And folks, if we keep doing the same thing, somebody's going to decide it. And largely what we're doing is we're allowing other people to decide it by not actively engaging civically. And we need to get out. We need to make a difference. If you believe in this candidate, how do they find you? Yeah,
so you could go to my website, solomonverduzco.com, and you could find out ways to contact me, follow me on social media. We're creating an organization group, Creators for Liberty, where it's going to be a bunch of Gen Z content creators spreading education, inspiring people to come to the Conservative Party.
Well, I look forward to that. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. Thank you for this time.
Thank you, Eric, for having me on.